Hello, everybody. I'm Marla Masunis. I'm the Collection Information Manager at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And it is my great pleasure to chair this session today called How the West Was Digitized, 3 Huge Projects. This session basically came out of friends sitting around talking about the commonalities in the work that they do and the wonderful content that all 3 of these people are going to showcase for you. Personally, I was never really that much aware of Art of the West, but there's a tremendous amount of material there in all of its many aspects. So you're going to see just a little bit of that today from each of these presentations. And let's see. So just to give you a little bit of logistical overview, Diana will speak first, and then Jana. And then we will have Rebecca. And after the first 2 speakers, we'll have a few minutes for some questions. We'll have a lot more time for questions at the end. But please feel free to, shout out questions as we go along. And we also would like to get a sense, if we have the time, of if you have issues you want to ask the group or, things we can crowdsource or help each other with ideas, we would love to do that. That's something we always do in the California SIG, and I think it's really helpful for everybody. So in this panel, as I said, we'll be showcasing these 3 fabulous collections and how to digitize them, or as my friend Jana said, how the sausage is made. Over the years at MCN, we've done different panels and different workshops about digitizing, and probably more than 10 years ago, we started with that. And so things have definitely evolved in the meantime. The bar for accessibility has gotten lower. And I think it's a very valid thing to keep talking about because, as we all know, there are always new people at MCN and people who maybe last year didn't think they needed it, but now all of a sudden a project has landed in their lap. So they do need it. Can I just see some hands of who works with digitizing images? Okay, great. And how many of you have it down so well that you're kind of just here to validate yourself? I don't see any hands. Okay.
We're in the same state.
Good. Well, then we are all together. Okay, so we'll be talking about images, materials, we're going to talk about equipment, staff. We're going to talk about money because that's what we all want to know about. We'll talk about workflow. And we are bringing you our best ideas of things that we've discovered. Hopefully we'll have a few bits of advice for you so that you can avoid pitfalls, perhaps. Or at least go back to your own institutions and talk about the wonderful things that you've just thought of, right? So, briefly introduce the 3 speakers. Diana Folsom is the head of collection digitization at the Thomas Gilcrease Institute of American History and Art at the University of Tulsa. And Diana is our beginning stages speaker. So she's looking out over the vast landscape of this enormous collection she has started to know. Jana Hilda is the Collection Information and Imaging Manager at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art in Fort Worth. And Jana is deeply embedded in these projects. If you had a chance to look at her very impressive bio, you will know that she is a wonderful resource for all of you. And she'll be telling you about her ongoing project. And then Rebecca Menendez is the Director of Information Technology at the Autry National Center in Los Angeles. And Rebecca is unable to be with us physically, but she is going to be with us via Google Hangout. So she will be speaking about some projects that she's done that, have met with some success. So, without any further delay, take it away, Diana.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Folsom, Head of Collections Digitization, as Marla mentioned, at the Gilcrease Museum. The full name is the Thomas Gilcrease Institute of American History and Art, which is a long title but gives you an idea of the wide range of stuff we have to handle. At LACMA, starting at about, I think it was 1998 or 1999, I was involved as a key player on the team to digitize the LACMA collection. So I spent about 12 or 13 years working on that and getting it online as well. So I do have that background to bring to this museum. This is a small museum with a ginormous collection. And what are we digitizing? There's about 300,000 objects and about 100,000 archive items. I report to the director of the museum, which is really nice to have that level of attention, and that shows you how much importance this project is given there at the museum. It's one of the top priorities for the institution, and probably because we are a small museum in a fairly obscure location of Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's really our best way of getting to be known or for people to be able to see what we have, access the collection, is by putting it online. The collection was created by one person, Thomas Gilcrease, who was part Muskogee Creek Indian. They discovered oil on his land. He had an oil lease that he realized he was not getting the good end of the deal, shall we say. He had the short end of the stick. So he trained himself to become an oil man and got back his lease. And mainly, we all feel that he made money in order to create an art collection, in order to support artists. He supported a lot of Native American artists in the region. He had them live at his house and supported them so they could make work for a few years at a time. So he was an amazing man. And when he ran out of money, he went on archaeological digs. So we have some incredible archaeological information as well. He started in 1922, and he bought widely. He was really, probably unconsciously, trying to trace the making of the United States and the making of that region. So we have all types of things. We have Western art, we have ancient art, we have Spanish and French colonial journals and writings, which are amazing. We have papers and manuscripts of the local tribal chiefs, rare books, maps, archaeological items from ancient mounds. We're like a mini Smithsonian. And then we also have these incredible artist archives and complete studios for several artists, all of their things that were in the studio, their easels, their paints, their boots, their everything. And we even have the largest holdings of Thomas Moran and his beautiful sketchbooks and etchings and some personal papers as well. And then we also have the Charlie Russell Research Collection. And I'm new at the Gilcrease Museum, as you know, but as we were working on this panel, I got to learn that my dear friend and colleague, Jana Hilda, had worked intimately with this collection and these photographs already. And they have put up a website with the timeline of Charlie Russell's life. And they had information that they didn't have, so they generously shared their photo captions and information with us so that we can have more complete records about many of the photographs and items in this collection that used to be the Britzman collection that we acquired a few years ago. So thank you to Collaboration and Women of the West and Jana. I mentioned that we have manuscripts and information from tribal chiefs that were empowered during the removal process. We have many related documents, such as this is a Cherokee muster roll that you see on the right. And then, of course, we have documents that keep track of the other side of the story, which is the Oklahoma settlers and the U.S. and the U.S. government pushing into the land and taking it away from the Native Americans. So we even have George Washington's personal gardening book. So we really have a collection that tells almost the entire story of the making of this region. And then we have tens of thousands of photographs. Jana, you probably recognize this one too, huh? Nancy Russell. Nancy. Yeah. So our goal is to enable searches across all collections by content topics And as you can see, we have artworks, we have a lot of archive material, we have a lot of anthropology and archaeological data and images, so we have our work cut out for us. So what is our process? We've gotten off to a pretty standard start, and we really are starting pretty much at square one. But I did come in to have about 3 years' worth of budget waiting for me, which is great. And much of that budget helps pay for university graduate assistants. So we have a lot of graduate assistants and interns and some volunteers helping us. I do have a full-time postgraduate fellow for 3 years who is kind of overseeing and managing this work of the graduate assistants. And she's also a content expert, which I think is very helpful, and we're trying to bring in content experts into this process as much as possible. But we found that we really did not have a very good inventory of our collection as yet. So that's a part of the process, doing that very basic work of getting a more accurate inventory and an infrastructure. They did have the TMS collections management system when I got there. However, they really had no system for managing images or even a very good system for storing the images. So we did just acquire a server for the images, and we hope soon to acquire a digital asset management system. So our first priority has been to catalog the Russell Research Collection, and we're really determining our priorities by content areas. And some of it is opportunistic, and some of it is funder-driven. So we have a big funder who's really behind and excited about getting this Russell Research Collection online. So, of course, that encourages this to become the highest priority. And it's a very famous collection for those who are in the Western art field. So, and it's fascinating, really fascinating to work with. And so we've finished making about 13,500 skeletal records, and our imaging is nearly complete. So we've made pretty good progress, and that's been in about 9 months. And they started a little bit before I got there. And then we're attempting to create imaging workstations in each area, so that there's an imaging workstation in the art area, an imaging workstation in anthropology, there's a main photo studio, and then there's an imaging workstation in the archive area. We did also just receive some grant money from the Cherokee tribe to digitize the papers of the chief, John Ross, who was their chief during the removal process, and also to fund 2 interns as well. So that's going to help us get that segment of the archives created. We also have a new research center, the Helmreich Research Center, that is being built on our grounds by the University of Tulsa, and that is going to really focus on the archive materials. We will have another imaging studio over there and some room for catalogers as well, but that's where we'll focus more on works on paper, maps, books, and these manuscripts of important people. And then the anthropology and ethnography collection is something that is an area that's new to me, and it has some very particular curiosities, shall we say, in the way archaeologists catalog their works, the way they don't seem to feel a need to share this online. I'm not sure why. Maybe some of you might have some insight into that, but I'm finding there are some major collections in the region where I live now in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, that have some magnificent collections, but they're all just being quietly worked with behind the scenes and not online. So we're hoping to get a pretty good group of material online relatively soon to help encourage the archaeologists to share. But the other problem we have, or challenge, with the anthropology and ethnography collection is that we have an infestation problem. We also need to move this collection now that we're going to expand into the archive area, because the archive is moving to the new building. So this is a chance for us to move and freeze and image and rehouse this collection. So that's the approach we're taking to this segment of the collection, which is about 200,000 things. So curiously, this is one of the biggest parts of our collection, and this will be the slowest going, I think. And you can see here's some of the storeroom where graduate students are making boxes and working on the inventory and moving the objects to each location. And look at all that beautiful pottery in there. So you can see someone here moving items to conservation for unpacking and cleaning. and then to imaging, repacking, freezing. And this is slow work. I'm trying to encourage just a light conservation, but even that takes some time. Here, the conservator is expecting a bandolier bag. And here you can see image being shot and then linked to TMS. So all of this is pretty standard stuff. I'm really looking to the Smithsonian and any of you for suggestions about ways to speed up or streamline this process. I think for the works on paper that are small and flat, and for the archives and for the books, I think we'll be able to work pretty quickly, but the ethnography and archaeology will take some time. We also want to better serve and engage our audiences in the region. So the next project that I'm really interested in proceeding with is a project that will involve Native artists, local artists, and tribal elders and archaeologists and anthropologists. And particularly because there's a growing movement in Oklahoma to learn the lost old tribal ways of making things, of making ceramic vessels, of doing beadwork, basketry, and I've gotten particularly interested in the work that they're doing to relearn the old ways of pottery making. And the way they're learning their old ways is by going to museum collections. And there are many small museums in the region, none of which are online, and that's what the artists are having to do, is go to the little collections and study the pottery and the objects, and then through trial and error relearn the old ways because it was lost on the Trail of Tears. An example, and this is one of my heroes, is Jerry Redcorn. I'd read about her through the exhibition the Chicago Art Institute did called Hero Hawk and Open Hand. And she was really one of my heroes even while I still lived in California, because she did just, as I described earlier, she went to these tiny museums, she studied the ceramic vessels, she did trial and error, she dug her own clay, she learned how to recreate these beautiful pottery designs and styles and shapes, and she fires them in her own backyard. And then here's another ceramic potter with our Gilcrease Museum curator, Chase Kahwinhut Earls. He also took the initiative to come to our collection to explore the storeroom so that he could learn about how to make pottery. So our new plan is to invite Native artists, archaeologists, and cultural experts to be taggers on a private site and put in the terms that Native artists will find useful to search for the shapes, the styles, the iconography. But then at the same time, we're not going to neglect the archaeologists and scholars. We also will be inviting scholars from the University of Arkansas to add search terms and tags from their perspective. It's just that the archaeologists usually name things according to the name of the guy who found the object, which doesn't really help anybody else find the item. So that's why we feel it's important to bring in multiple perspectives in this tagging. And we're going to focus this effort on about 3,500 Mississippian ceremonial complex ceramic vessels from one particular collection. We have tens of thousands of ceramic vessels, but this will be a kind of a discrete unit that will only involve 4 tribes so that it won't get too politically complicated. And we'll be able to this will be the most substantial, largest collection of its sort to go online if we can get it up soon enough. So I'm very excited about this project. It's a real personal, special need from my perspective as an artist as well. So in a way, the Gilcrease Museum is playing the role of tribal elder to assist with reclaiming the past in our community. And the director of the Spiro Mound had a wonderful quote the other day. He said that the local ancient mounds are the inspiration for modern artists. Native artists derive spiritual power and continuity of power from the old ways into the present by using this iconography and the old methods. It goes way beyond what archaeologists tell you. So I think it's our duty to share these works online and to help the Native tribes reclaim their past. So that's one of the main things we're working on. Okay, so Jana.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana.
Hi, I'm Jana Hilda, the Collection Information and Imaging Manager at the Amon Carter Museum of American Art in Fort Worth, just a few hours south of Diana. I am calling this presentation Reasonably Rapid Imaging at the Amon Carter, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Workflow. So, the Amon Carter opened in 1961 with, by our standards, just a handful of works from Amon G. Carter's personal collection. He was a Fort Worth philanthropist and publisher. The 360 works were predominantly by Frederick Remington and Charlie Russell, and included paintings, works on paper, and sculpture. By our 50th anniversary in 2011, our collection had grown to about 225,000 objects. 95% of that is photography, plus pretty much the gamut of fine art. And the photography collection is predominantly composed of the archives of 8 American photographers, some of which were extremely prolific for many decades. And they entered the collection over a period of time. You see in our earlier years, collecting was fairly steady. In the 1970s, we started collecting some larger photography collections. In 1979, we took the archive of Western photographer Laura Gilpin, which consisted of about 20,000 objects. And then we took a few more artist archives through the 80s. And then in 1990, we took the Elliott Porter archive, which you can see is a bit of a cliff in terms of our collection growth. I'm not sure exactly how many objects are in that archive because there are so many types of negatives that we haven't cataloged individually. Things like masks and dye transfer matrices and all these multi-part negatives and transparencies. But we're still responsible for them, and you can see this might have caused a bit of a challenge for our registrars and collection managers through the 90s. Which made them say, seriously? So, fast forward to now, we have 72,000 images available that represent 57,000 objects. There's a disparity there because we do have quite a bit of sculpture and multi-part types of objects that will have multiple shots per object. 41,000 of those images have been made available to the public via our website, and I'm uploading probably 1,000 every couple of weeks as I go through them and just check the records for quality and rights. We currently are working on an NIH digitization grant, and we have 7 months left in that grant. And the cowgirl, you probably can't see it, but the caption says, next! So, kind of the short story of how we got where we are today. 1999 through 2005, there were a number of smaller, kind of isolated projects to target specific collections. This fellow here is Charles Russell, a self-portrait, Charlie himself. And one of the projects was to digitize the Remington and Russell collection. We've done some other projects that isolated specific photography collections, but none of them were really holistic projects looking at the body of our collection. They were very focused and a little bit cherry-picked, so every time one of these projects would happen, the images weren't necessarily appropriate to be used for other projects, and they kind of had a limited lifespan. In 2006, we migrated from Argus collection management system to KEMU, and migrated about 5,000 images from Argus. Probably 3,500 of those have now been refreshed because they were too low res for our needs now. But getting that new shiny collection management system made everyone realize how many records had no thumbnail and how huge our collection was with no visual reference to it. Part of the migration to KEMU included an intranet module that we could use to let non-collection staff access collection records. So, suddenly it was very apparent to education and publications and PR that there was all this great material out there, but no one knew what it looked like. So in 2006, we were looking at all of this content and trying to figure out where we even could begin, because it was a really overwhelming body of work. And we kind of made some decisions at that point to make our process a little bit faster and maintain our sanity. Our first rule was no cherry picking. We weren't going to prioritize specific artists or specific parts of the collection. We were just going to systematically go through storage and just shoot what we found. We also made a rule of no scanners because they're very slow. And we do everything on a copy stand with a digital camera that's tethered to a Mac, and that's definitely the way to go. Our other rule was that it doesn't have to be perfect to work. I think like a lot of museum professionals, we are dyed-in-the-wool perfectionists, and sometimes that gets in the way of even starting a project because you want your entire plan to be perfect before you even begin. But sometimes you just have to accept that it's a learning process and start somewhere. And then we also came up with the rule of slap and click, which means we would pull work through storage based on size, and that way, when you put it on the copy stand, you're not constantly adjusting the camera height and the camera location. You can just put work on it, shoot it, move it, and go to the next thing without a lot of effort in between. So in 2008, we began a grant funded by the National Endowment for the Arts to digitize and catalog our works on paper collection, which is 6,000 prints, drawings, watercolors, and This Lady is a Pastel by Whistler. We had one full-time photographer, one full-time cataloger, and I was the project manager. And it was a big learning curve for us because we had to digitize everything from the tiniest pastel, and this little landscape here is maybe 4 by 6 inches, up to the largest woodcut, and this print here is 9 feet long. And it's unmounted, and it's a really big, floppy, unmanageable piece of paper. So we had to invent some ways to, not only shoot them because, the different sizes, but some kind of way to actually physically maneuver them through the photography studio. And everything in between. And this lovely print here is part of our tamarind lithography workshop collection. In 2010, we went live with our online collection database with 5,000 images. By the next year, we had 12,000 images total. The NEA grant was less than 2 years and was $100,000. And at that point, at the end of 2011, all of our painting, sculpture, and works on paper were digitized, leaving only the behemoth photography collection. So in 2010, we began our IMLS Access to American Photography digitization grant, where we shot 12,000 photographs that hadn't been shot before, and then cataloged an additional 12,000 that did have images. So we ended up with between 24 and 25,000 really good records with pictures. And as we went through that process, we also cleared rights as best we could, and everything that had rights clearance is on our website now. And all it took was 2 years, a very large grant, a full-time photographer, a full-time cataloger, a summer research assistant who went through with our curator and helped date a lot of objects that had been cataloged as having no date, even though our collection follows a pretty narrow time frame, and the project director, and of course Emu. And we don't have any photos of Emu, so I put in an ostrich, but it was from this grant. So, beginning last summer, we started on our NIH Access to Artist Archives grant, and the original grant goals were to go through those 8 artist archives, digitize all of the prints, put them online, and create collection guides for each online. All of the artist archives are either in the public domain or we control the rights for them, so that wasn't an issue and we could just publish them in bulk. But the really great part of this grant is that our photographer is incredibly fast, and he went through the entire collection of prints in the first year of the grant. It was supposed to take 2. So he's moved on into our higher risk, more fragile collections of negatives within the artist archives that include our nitrate negatives and glass plate negatives.
So Jana, just a, I'm sorry, quick point of clarification. When you say that he went through everything, maybe you said it already, but how many was that?
It's about 12,000.
Good Lord.
Yeah, he's fast.
Is he available for cloning?
And so these are kind of the terms of this grant. Once again, 1 full-time photographer, 1 full-time cataloger, a research assistant who came in to write the collection guides this summer, the project director, and KUMU support to deal with the web components of the project. And we do all of this with no dam system. So we shoot 3 images for each object, and sometimes more if it's 3D or has multiple parts or really interesting inscriptions on the back or something like that. We do a master TIFF, an access-sized JPEG that we use internally for PowerPoint and is also the image that is served through EMU to our website. And then EMU creates a thumbnail for use within the system itself. The files are stored on our network and backed up nightly. We base the file name on the accession number, and only about 4 of us can edit the master files. The intranet module of KE actually provides staff access and public access to the collection images. We don't use the dams. It's all live data powered by EMU. So our recipe for success or disaster or whatever it is that particular day is what we feel is a perfected but evolving workflow. With every project, you find different obstacles maybe that you weren't expecting and different complications. So while you already have this workflow in place that's kind of tried and true, it still has to be change some, and you have to be open to that. We also have a really talented professional team with no drama, because everyone respects each other as professionals, and I think really appreciates each other's abilities. So we don't have to micromanage, and we just subsist on lots of lists and no drama. They also have a genuine interest in photography, the content of the collections, and the artists represented in those artist archives. We have strong support from administration and other departments. Everyone is very complimentary and very happy to see all of these images. And we also maintain our sanity through lots of podcasts and field trips when we are bored with repetitive work, which we all do. We like to take field trips in the galleries and just look at art. So, so what's next? Now that we have this body of content, what are we going to do with it? Everything exhibitable will be shot by July 2014. So we want to use it. Our Google Art Project presence will launch in next month. Art Store will launch in the spring. And we're looking into different types of collaborations with other institutions and departments within our own institution. For the first time, really integration of our digital collections and digital assets into our strategic and interpretive plans is happening. And we're finding new ways to promote the digital collections to our audiences. And we want to find even more new ways to release our content into the wild. So.